Parliament by the management team, and then they will be joined by the academic team, and then I will invite the members of Parliament who are here for the third photo session, and then the HURIPEC team for the last photo session. We will have the other group photo later on. So management photo, shoot please. And then I invite the professors for the second after this. Professor Loka, Professor Bachibinga, any other professor who I haven't seen, please come forward. The academic community, please join the academic community. Professor Loka, please come forward. Please. It is going to get larger, so prepare your cameras. So the third photo, there are honorable members of Parliament, please join. Honorable Gallo, please, please kindly, if you can, please. And finally, the HURIPEC team, please. The HURIPEC team, the research team, the entire HURIPEC team, the final photo. Yes, HURIPEC team, come.
Hold this. Make it this way. First one speaking.
Thank you very much. So we can take our seats as the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker moves out of the room. We really appreciate you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your time. And thank you for launching the report. We are going to resume our program, but I assure you our program will end as scheduled. So by noon, we've actually saved quite a lot of time for us to even network after this. So I invite us to take our seats as the management team escorts the Right Honorable Deputy Speaker. In the meantime, allow me to take this opportunity to recognize a few people in the House. We have a full House, as I had earlier on highlighted to you. We have honorable members of Parliament as they're escorting the Deputy Speaker. We have Honorable Lakay Sharon, she's right over there. We have Honorable Katesh, he's around. We also have Honorable Rionga Joseph. They've been part of the Transparency and Accountability Champions. People we've been looking up to in Parliament who've been engaging actively in various committees and raising some of these issues, but also sharing their perspectives. So we have representation from NSTI, Madam Nambeja, you're welcome. We also have a representation from the Ministry of Finance, Madam Margaret, you're welcome. We have EPRC, Medad, you're welcome. We have academicians, Dr. Bachibinga is here. I already introduced Honorable Wandera Ogalo as we are preparing for our session, which is a panel discussion. We also have the representative of World Health Organization, Ross, you're welcome. We have the first secretary of the Political and Consular Affairs of the Embassy of Belgium to Uganda and South Sudan, Ms. Stephanie, you're welcome. We also have representation from Siatini. Musana, you're welcome. We have Dr. Patrick from UHF. We have the DVC, we saw him. We also have the PRO from Makerere. You're welcome, Mr. Gaba. Our principal has just stepped out to accompany the Deputy Speaker, for many of you who joined us late. And also finally, we have Andrew Jingo from ESSEC. I don't know whether that is the African Canadian Civic Engagement Council or the Action of Climate Change and Engagement something. You're really welcome, Andrew. We have Jeff from CSBAG, you're welcome. Maria Dikini from School of Law. We have our wonderful team from School of Law, Madam Zam, and the entire HURIPEC team is here. We'll be recognizing others as we receive information and your presence and as you take part. Allow me move to an interesting, exciting part of our program. And I see already the panel is constituted and the moderator is already here. I'm only waiting for Honorable Katesh to join the panel, and then we'll be able to start. And he's already coming up. Thank you, Honorable Katesh. Allow me move this microphone to our distinguished Professor Joe Loko Nyango, who will be chairing this session, and I would invite you to keenly follow, and then you'll have an opportunity to engage, and I assure you, this launch will be on schedule, because I trust the moderator, and I trust the conversations that are unfolding. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jackson, for steering the meeting this far. I think we're doing very well, or maybe not so well. We're 20 minutes after 10 o'clock. Our brief is to discuss this report and discuss the other issues which have emerged over the course of the introductory section. My name is Oloko Onyango. I teach at Makerere University, and I am going to moderate this panel. I think there are basically three things that we are concerned about with respect to the report that we're going to discuss today. And these are the issues that I would request that our panelists address. But also, because we have such a distinguished audience of both persons who are overseers, members of parliament. I also heard that there's some members from the executive and members from civil society, that we will have an open discussion about this matter. So our panelists are here to stimulate the discussion and provide us with some insight on where we should take this issue. But there are basically, as far as I can see, three things involved, three broad things, and they've been mentioned by Dr. Zahara, they've been re-emphasized by Businje, they've been alluded to by the Honorable Deputy Speaker. First is the question of accountability. How do we account for public resources? All right? Leave aside the manner, because of course we're talking about COVID. We know it was an emergency. This was an emergency situation. Government was obviously constrained to not only do something, but to be seen to be doing something. And so we can excuse the circumstances in which this took place. Nevertheless, those events happened. There were consequences of those events, and we require an accounting for those events. That's number one. Number two is the question of transparency. That has been alluded to here. In other words, in terms of how these processes took place, were the mechanisms that were adopted, in terms of both the use of those monies and the accounting for them, were those transparent? And in all of these issues, we are asking, how can we, first of all, ensure not only that there is an accounting for what has happened, but to make sure that the next time there's a pandemic, and I can assure you, and our public health specialists here can tell us, there's going to be another pandemic. Whatever kind of pandemic, there may be a health pandemic or a political pandemic, I don't know. But there's going to be another pandemic. The question is, are we prepared to address that question? And lastly, and this was raised, I think, very clearly by the Deputy Honorable Speaker of Parliament. The question of enforcement or implementation. And this question I put both to the Honorable Kateshumba as well as to the Honorable Ogalo as distinguished former and current members of Parliament. Is Parliament only a talking shop? The question of implementation or enforcement. Are Parliament's recommendations or decisions only advisory? And in any case, when we talk about taking advice, if you don't take my advice, and as a consequence of not taking my advice, there are negative repercussions, do we allow it just to stay at that point? And I go back to the point, as far as I am concerned, Parliament, and I want to re-emphasize this, Parliament is superior to the executive. And the executive has a responsibility to account to Parliament. And it is not an advisory responsibility. And I'll stop there because I don't want to preempt the discussion. We have two. Oh, I'm being asked, is it possible to have coffee now? I've been told I'm jumping the gun. Surely, people, come on. Oh, now. So I've been preempted because Honorable Katesh is leaving at 11. I think we can have a working coffee. We're not going to break this session. A working coffee, there's coffee outside. Those of you who are sleep deprived, get some coffee. Otherwise, we are continuing with the panel. Okay? And I would like, at that point, to introduce our panelists. We have two very distinguished panelists. On the one hand, Honorable Wandera Ogalo, who I know as Honorable Dan Wandera Ogalo, who happened to be my prefect in a school which, is it a school? He was a very good prefect, and he was an excellent MP, both at the national level as well as at the East African level. And so Honorable Dan will take us through his views. He goes first. Okay. Then secondly, but not, by no means least, we have Honorable Dixon, Kateshumba. I think people call him Katesh. I hope I can also call you Katesh without you feeling offended. Honorable Katesh is a long-time employee of the Uganda Revenue Authority. So he has collected money. He knows what money is about. He knows also what accountability is about. And those of you who may know also, he fought a very hard election, which he came out of, I think, unbruised. I can see, he's very, very sharp. And Honorable Katesh is a member of Parliament currently and obviously has that experience of both being an accountability officer as well as an overseeing officer. I believe he was Director of Customs when he was in Uganda Revenue Authority. So without much further ado, I would like us to, I think we'll start with Honorable Katesh since he doesn't have that much time with us, and then we will move to Honorable Dan. So Honorable Katesh, please, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our moderator, and I must say that I'm glad to be here discussing this topic with my senior, Honorable Wandera. When we were still young, we used to say we want to be like him. He was a very good debater. And really, I thank you for your contribution. I want also to take this opportunity to appreciate HURIPEC. I have not seen a sustained effort on a matter of accountability like it has been done on this particular one. At one time, I wanted to ask Dr. Zahar and say, but if this is how you insist on things, then you must be a very tough woman. Because we have had meetings, we have engaged, and finally the report is out. So I want to really appreciate the team. But most importantly, a report that goes through a consultative process, you've got views you've had, and so it's a credible report on the onset. Now, the three things that the moderator has picked out as a summary of the output. The output. I will restrict myself to the three. One, the issue of accountability of public resources. I want to say this, and I will try to be very honest. I know there are press people here. But we have a problem with accountability in this country. We don't know whom do we account to. In this particular case, what we see is that there is a lot of paper accountability. We are very good at accountability with paper. But accountability by results is a problem. So I don't know which accountability you are talking about. If it is accountability by paper, we have so many qualified and unqualified reports. You go to the districts, you go to the local governments, there is always accountability. People meet the timeline, they submit invoices, vouchers, and all that, we get satisfied. But accountability by results is the biggest problem. And so, this particular case of COVID, of course, it was a crisis, and like my colleague, my boss said here, when there is a crisis, people tend to take advantage. I know one, I think it is Henry Kissinger who mentioned that never let a crisis go to waste. That has been misused in our case here. So the signals, how do things start getting wrong? How do you see what are the signals? The moment this COVID crisis started, when you start seeing public resources avoiding the formal structures, then you know there will be a problem of accountability. For example, when this crisis started, you start having working groups, seminars. When you go to the local government, you'll find that the entire local government structure was actually ignored. And who is in charge? RDCs, GSOs, police enforcing all these lockdown, whatever. But the local government structures completely sidestepped. And so we were on a committee of parliament that went around to look at issues of COVID. You go somewhere and you find that isolation centers have not been built. And you don't know whom to actually ask. Because the district will say, these things went through the task force. So these task forces, the moment you start seeing formal structures sidestepped, new structures being created that are informal, then that is a recipe for accountability issues. And I think this is what happened in case of COVID. There is a lesson we can learn from. Because we have good structures in this country with checks and balances. But when you start creating informal structures, then you create a problem. So that's a very big lesson that we can pick. Transparency. Transparency, again, we were in a crisis, but the crisis does not mean that we cannot get organized. So what happened is you start seeing unclear guidelines that keep changing. And I think we have seen it even under the PDM, which we are tackling now. Today, there is this guideline, then tomorrow it changes, So this is what happens. When there is no clear cut that you move from A to B, then transparency becomes a problem. And this is what we notice. Because even the enforcement of lockdown measures, a lot of them were violated by the very enforcers. Because you would find a certain district, an RDC puts up a roadblock at this hour, even before. Then you have someone going to the hospital on a border, a pregnant woman. You find someone is arrested. We had to intervene most times as members of parliament. Very unclear guidelines because individuals take advantage. So that's what I would say. Now, finally, on the enforcement of the implementation, is Parliament only a talking show? This is the question we get all the time. Before I joined Parliament, I did not know that things. I have actually realized that I was living in a different world. Because while on the other side, I thought that things are very clear. You must work so hard. Sometimes don't sleep. On this side now you start encountering public officers who have no care at all for the country. And sometimes you wonder whether what people cry to get jobs, but when they get there, you ask yourself, what is the why don't you work? Why do you want to come to office at 10? So the issue of implementation is not an issue of Parliament. It is an issue of our moral fiber as a country. And I don't know how we are going to address it. Because Parliament, we do our work. Legislate, do oversight, appropriate. But every year, Auditor General produces reports. So before you come to Parliament, ask what happened. How are they integrated in the budgeting process? Then you come to Parliament. Yes, of course we like to talk. We talk, but sometimes we are also getting tired. In fact, some of us, we are very powerful women. You can tell us, what can Parliament do? The legal people here should advise us, because it's not that we have not talked. We have talked. We pass reports. But we are also frustrated. So, Parliament's recommendation advisory, can they be taken up? I think it is a question that we need to be advised. When I was being oriented, I was told our work, some of our recommendations are advisory. But what more can we do? I can tell you, in that Parliament now, there is no lack of talking, lack of zeal, but there is also some sense of frustration on issues of accountability. Like the Speaker mentioned, issue of value for money is a very, very big problem. The good news is, I should say good and bad, we have reached a point where even the money to misuse or eat is no longer available. I don't know whether to say it is good news or bad news. Because I sit on the budget committee, I see the growing list of unfunded priorities. I am afraid even what to eat is not available. So we have reached a point where everybody there are people who will sit in offices, there is no work to do, but they are employed to sit, and they do not have money to implement. And that puts us to a discussion of what do we need to do. So maybe the lessons out of that will be that we will have to strengthen our eyes on what is available, because it is reducing. We cannot fund our budget by 70%. The donors have also dwindled because of the global challenges. So it is time for us now to say, okay, we only have 20%, how do we use it? Maybe the good thing will come out of that to strengthen accountability and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Katesh. The problem with the good news is that people even try to steal money which is not there. So I think we need to find ways of addressing even that question, Honorable Katesh. But we'll come back. I want to ask Honorable Dan to please make his remarks about the report and about the issue which I raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Rather, Professor. And thank you, HURIPEC, for organizing this, for the work you have done, and for enabling us to be here to really interrogate very serious matters. 3 issues have been raised by Professor Oloka. Let me begin with my remarks with the last one. Is Parliament a talking shop? Where is this implementation and enforcement? Are we wasting resources having a parliament if there is nothing going to come out of it? Well, the nature of things, the way I look at them, is that you'll always have these fights between essentially the 3 arms of government, each one always trying to have an upper hand of the other. The executive will always try to dominate parliament and the judiciary. Essentially because it has the coercive arm, instruments of coercion. It implements the laws on a day-to-day basis. So then it appears, it appears as if it is superior. Yet it is not. I will agree with Joe over that. It is not. But Parliament must expect that it must take its power. It is not going to be given on a silver plate and say, there is your power, also now we are equal. No. When I first joined the Parliament, the 6th Parliament, Parliament was more or less a department of the executive. Because the Minister of Finance determined the budget of Parliament. How much money Parliament would have was decided by the Minister of Finance. The staff of Parliament were under President's office. They were employed and promoted, dismissed by President's office. And now you are saying you are going to have oversight when even your own staff are not loyal to you? You are going to have oversight over a ministry. You want to check on a ministry where there has been a Minister of Health has, through COVID funds, has mismanaged the funds, and you are going to beg for funds to go and investigate the Minister of Health? That was the situation in the 6th Parliament. And it was working very well for the executive. So we fought back and enacted the Administration of Parliament Act to create that independence, to formulate, to manage our own budget, to determine and manage our own budget, and above all, to employ our own staff so that the executive doesn't tell them what to do to us. So, for purposes of being a talking shop and so on, Parliament you must know that you have to contest power with the executive. They're not going to give it for you for free. Yes, some resolutions, true, are advisory. But if you advise a minister, recommend it to a minister and say, we expect this to be done, and he does nothing, you can formulate it as a ground, one of the grounds. You look at the Constitution there and you see under censure there, what are the grounds of censuring the minister? And you make it clear to him, you say, yes, we told you to do this, and you refused. We are not going to deal with you using our power of censure. So at the end of the day, all over the world, there is always these tensions, there are always these fights between the executive and the parliament. And it is the parliament to reassert its power. I agree with Joe that actually parliament is superior to the executive. One of the biggest reasons for that is that it is a parliament which authorizes expenditure through appropriation. If you don't pass the Finance Act, where will the executive get money to spend? If you don't appropriate under the appropriation, where will it get money to do? So it is always tensions, but you must take your power. And when eventually you do that, you will find that you are in effect superior to the executive. Of course, there are, or rather, let me first deal with the transparency over this COVID issue. All these problems we are looking at because of transparency is the mechanisms which we had in place at the time were not sufficient to protect us from opaqueness. So then, because they were not sufficient, they were overridden. Those procedures were overridden by other procedures. If we had mechanisms in place, this transparency wouldn't even be talking about it. The United Kingdom passed the Coronavirus Act within 4 days, 2020. Coronavirus Act 2020, within 4 days. Normally, a bill to become an act in Britain takes a minimum of 4 months. But within 3 days, they had passed the Coronavirus Act 2020, which contained all issues of how they would deal with the situation which had arisen. Questions of accountability, they're all there, they were provided for them. That is why you here in the Parliament of Uganda, under your rules of procedure, you have a rule which says you can actually pass a law in 1 day. You can pass a bill and take it through all the 3 stages in 1 day if it is urgent. So if we had that mechanism, we would have addressed the issues of procurement, issues of accountability in that law. But as Joe said, the most important thing now is to look at the future. How do we handle that? So we would be looking at putting in place mechanisms which will ensure that we don't have to go through what we went through. And it is understandable. Really, government had to deliver. There was need for swift action. Parliament itself, members couldn't meet. You couldn't go out to engage with the public, otherwise you will get the virus. So it was understandable that happened. But now we must build on that in terms of transparency. We can still use the tools we have of oversight, but we can also learn on how we did things during that era and build on them. Technology, a lot of technology was now used in terms of oversight, in terms of your work as parliamentarians. So you can now build on those. The question of transparency is not easy. there will always be people out there who don't want transparency. And that's why you have those tools of oversight as parliamentarians, which must be now used to ensure transparency. The parliamentarians know all those tools very well. Lastly, on accountability. On accountability, again, the mechanisms are there for accountability. One, your committees, accountability committees. The accountability committees, Public Accounts Committee, Local Government Public Accounts Committee, can all help with accountability. If you look at now, like where many parliaments are going, they're now using, they are no longer using the traditional method of looking at the Auditor General's report. Value for money. The three is economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. That is the way you are going to have accountability. Not these ones of permanent secretary coming and saying, oh, you gave me so much money, I used it this way, I have accounted for it. No. The three is will ensure that actually the money has done what it was supposed to do. Not that you have spent it. The other mechanism is the budget for accountability. That is the time now to twist the executive. And incidentally, Parliament even has more power than for other parliaments had. Because for me, when I joined Parliament, the Budget Act wasn't there. We just enacted it. We enacted it because we felt that we were just a rubber stamp. So the Budget Act was put in place to ensure that you can fight back to the executive. And there is sufficient power there for purposes of accountability. The only problem I see normally is this arm twisting. Today you meet as parliamentarians, you agree on one thing. Next day when you meet, your friends are saying, but again, Katesh, you see that thing is a little bit difficult. They are making about turns. That's the only thing, the only problem. But through the Budget Act, accountability can be enhanced. Loans. The Minister of Finance is always coming up, oh, I want to borrow so much. And you also have at your disposal other institutions which can help. Auditor General, IGG, those which deal with the finances, to help committees with what is happening. The traditional way of oversight is not living up to help us. We must think more on how to go about it. Since more will have to come from you, let me stop there and hand back this to Joe.
Okay, thank you very, very much. So we've got, I think, quite a lot already on our plate. I hope Honorable Katesh will add on a few more minutes to stay. I think the questions are very clear, and I think also many people have their own perspectives on this report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the floor, get a few views, comments, and then bring it back to our panelists to take it from there. I also have a few I would also like them to take on further. So if we can, Jackson, can you take around the microphone? Can we see who
a certain percentage would go for emergencies. So there is a fund. However, the money which is supposed to be in that fund was amended to a much lesser figure. Now, if that is the case, that means that perhaps our bag is empty at the moment. So we need to get back to Parliament, put back that figure to where it was, but also make sure that the contingencies fund has the money to respond to emergencies. I thank you.
Mr. Adulo. The lady over here, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Margaret Kakande, Head of Budget Monitoring and Accountability Unit, Ministry of Finance. So first of all, I want to thank the research team that used our work as a precursor. So thank you for acknowledging our work. I have 3 comments. The first one is I'm reacting to clarification saying that an issue of accountability in terms of whom are we accounting to. I think that is the biggest problem. People say that power belongs to the people, but that way does it in this country? Because that way we should be accounting to the people. But it looks like Ugandans think that people who are in power are actually our bosses. So it looks like people don't know that if you're in government, whether you're a member of parliament or you're executive, you have to be accounting to us in the public. So with that dilemma, we have a problem. And I think unless we address that, then we have issues of accountability. That is one. Then two, there is an issue of, I think it was from Mandela who said that Parliament has some mechanisms of ensuring, for example, accountability in terms of if you want to arm twist the executive. So if you have a minister who does not do something, then you censure. Can you really do it? Because from our last experience, I think you try to do it. I think that person is still a minister. So we have a problem even with that. And then lastly, I want to comment on the issue from GIF, the issue of contingency fund. Like Honorable Kateshi is saying, as we speak, we don't have money. We don't have money even to fund, enough money to fund the things we must do. So we can't really sit here and talk about contingency. You can't have a budget where you can't work on your roads, and then you won't put the money in the contingency fund. So right now, I think our key problem is, first of all, can we raise enough resources? And then we can talk about contingency. Because even if you go to Parliament and they pass a law, there will be no money in that contingency fund. Because we don't have money to do things that we're supposed to be doing. So I think the bigger problem is resources, other than what other things of contingency, whatever. We know, for example, that we should have a contingency fund. But if there's no money for putting that in the contingency fund, what's the purpose of disturbing Kadesh and his colleagues in terms of passing another act? So I think we really have some big issues in this country. And I'm glad that the university is coming up now to actually help us in some of these things, doing research and helping to bring up the issues. But I think what you should be doing with people in academia is maybe work more with the public, because like Kadesh is saying, all of us are frustrated because we don't know who to account to, everybody is powerless. So really, we really have a problem in that country.
Thank you very much, and I'm really glad to have the voice from, should I say you're a member of the executive? Anyway, from the executive branch of the government. I'll take one more question and then we'll revert it to the panelists. Yes, my good friend, Honorable Winnie, please.
Thank you, Makerere University, and specifically HURIPEC, for gathering us here to discuss this very important aspect of accountability. Accountability has become an issue in our country, that whoever wants to hold people to account is looked at as an enemy. Because many people in Uganda don't think there is corruption. I'm told they have graduated it to mean cooperation. And you could see how they all cooperated in stealing iron sheets that were meant for the vulnerable communities of Karamoja. And I think I want to now add my voice to what Mrs. Kakande has said, that we ceased to accept that we work for someone. We ceased to accept that the Constitution gives power to the people, including all of us who are in leadership, beginning from number one, who said he works for no one and therefore he must account to no one. And so whoever works under him knows that there is no one you have to account to. This puts our country into some kind of intensive care unit. But in hospitals, in intensive care units, there are some attendants at least. But the intensive care unit of Uganda, of this country called Uganda, the intensive care unit where our country is one where everyone is afraid of the other, to the extent that nobody thinks is in control of anything except one person. And that is the problem that we have that has killed accountability, because all institutions that would have been otherwise used to create checks and balances have all been muzzled into just one entity of the presidency. And I think the ones who did the 1995 Constitution made that one big mistake of putting too much power into the presidency. Because you will read everything, the president shall do this, the president shall do this, the president shall appoint, the president shall, and maybe somehow, somewhere they thought the articles that were referring to the term limits and age limits would somehow act as safety valves in case you get a president who would have an insatiable appetite to power and an insatiable appetite to abuse of institutions. It did not work. And that is where we have a big problem. That the first accountability mechanisms that were envisaged in the Constitution were eroded, even before they could be put to trial. That was one gap that the framers of the Constitution looked at. So now we have a situation where everybody is looking at what does number one say. Parliament is waiting, what does number one say? The judiciary is waiting, what does number one say? The helplessness has gone down even to the population. I saw it during COVID. Every time people would sit to wait, what does the president say about COVID? Is he unlocking us or he's not unlocking us? Is he arresting anyone or he's not arresting anyone? Roadblocks were everywhere because number one had said lock the country. So we have put just too much power to the extent that even members of parliament have expressed their vulnerability. They have no power because they have to wait for one man to make a decision. And even in a situation like Mrs. Kakande has said, in a situation where year in, year out, even when the contagious fund was still at a 0.5 of the previous year's budget, the Auditor General's report always highlighted the fact that there was no money that had been provided under contagious fund. And so the country is just that we do firefighting almost all the time. That's why we go for borrowing. That's why we can't even be able to fund our budgets as they are supposed to be funded. And we keep in dates. To me, I believe that highlighting these issues is one very important thing. That even when people are doing the wrong things, they should know that some people are watching. And they still want the right things done. Our brothers and sisters in parliament should know that the world expects too much from you, even when you seem vulnerable. But the law is on your side. It gives you that power. Don't surrender. Don't just surrender. I know that the political multi-party dispensation is kind of taking a big toll on our population, to the extent that even those who mean well for the population of Uganda have just surrendered because they just want to remain in the good books of the political party that they belong to, in case a political party had a different view of what is being discussed. But parliamentarians, don't surrender. The power is in your hands. You either use it or you just give up and pack.
Thank you very much. I think on that note, the Honorable Winnie is saying, Number two, I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'm not an accountant. But in law, if you are broke or if you can't pay your debts, you are bankrupt. You should be declared bankrupt or wound up. Are we in a state of bankruptcy? If we're in a state of bankruptcy, shouldn't we declare that we're unable to pay our debts? Now, it seems to me, because this no money issue, but I see money. I personally see money. I see money being spent on certain things. So is the question no money or is it misuse of money? Honorable Katesh.
Thank you very much, and really my apologies. I had already informed the doctor that I have a lot of pressure. I'm supposed to be presenting somewhere. Again, we are in the budgeting period, and so I will just leave. But I have my colleagues here, Honorable Chairman MP for Guru, Ake, Dr. Yoga, and my colleagues will continue with some of the questions I may not answer, but and I like what Honorable Win says. I was hoping that you will come back to Parliament so that we find you there and you join us. I hope you, because we cannot give up. We have to continue talking and doing our work. Contingencies, I agree with my sister there. You can't talk of contingencies when you don't. It's like keeping food in the store when you don't have a meal. So let us get more, the academia, you have more to do. You have students there that are doing research. What can we do to push the economy forward? Whom are we accounting for? I also ask myself, when I went in elections, it was a very interesting situation. You find people, you have a health center, there are no drugs. But you have people there. So people would ask me, say, Honorable Katesh, we are suffering. There are some parts of this country where people think there is no government. Because the things which are basic cannot be done. And part of it is just the impunity in the structure of our technocrats. So I went to the health centers, I asked, give me the records of drugs. And you know, just from the planning, the incompetence in planning, follow-up, all this, at the end of the day, the mother goes to the health center, there is no drug. Not because there are no drugs, some drugs are expiring in Kampala. So it puts us as politicians. I think we have a responsibility as members of parliament to go back to our people. What I've tried to do, for example, is follow up the budget and say, break down this budget. What is the budget that goes to the local government? And actually get the people to know that this year they released money for this. And you, the people, you should go and follow up. That citizenship awareness, it is one of our fallback mechanisms. We must tell our people, if they have released money for a school, you tell the people and they have to go and supervise it. If there is a crack, they take a picture and send it. That's how people will start waking up. Otherwise, accountability is stopping at paper to the people. I think we need to do more. The citizenship advocacy, people getting to know how much money has been released for what, then they can follow up and account. But back to us as MPs, I think that we also need to change the methods we are using. I'll just share two things. I established 2 advisory committees in my constituency for health and education. They give me monthly reports. I facilitate them to move around. You know, teachers who would not go to be Kateshi's committee moving around to see what is happening at the health center, and they give me reports. I think there are certain things we can do. Oversight, we should not stop at calling people for meetings, quizzing them. Maybe we take interest on at lower levels to try and play a bit more role. Of course, it's a bit of a burden, but what do? We need to get re-elected. And I'm afraid 80% of us may not come back as things are. So we also need to start innovating ways on how do you come back. Because you go and shout and say, this man has been here budget. So you go back after 5 years, they say, but what happened? So we have to change our tactics, do some small things to survive and come back. Otherwise, we are not going to manage like we managed for all those years. I thank you very much, and I really appreciate. And I again, once again, I apologize that I have to step out. And anytime we are available, be invited.
Can we give Honorable Secretary? I thank you very much for sparing the time, and we wish you good luck in the next election.
I will be back. That one.
Okay, so I want to move the microphone to Honorable Dan. There are a number of issues which were raised, but it seems to me this is an issue raised by Honorable Kakande, Honorable Winnie, and some of the other comments which have been made. Mr. Wadulo as well. That the provision on the contingency fund has been overtaken by time. That the Constitution is not reflective of our needs and our circumstances. Constitution, 66 Constitution, really, the President was almighty. But it demonstrates that there's a serious problem, and I want to ask Honorable Dan to address this question. Do we need constitutional reform? That's number one. Number two, in terms of this question of accountability and the struggle between Parliament and the executive, does Parliament need its own Attorney General? Because the Attorney General under the Constitution is advisor, legal advisor to government. Government hereby including Parliament. But it seems to me sometimes the Attorney General sides more with the executive than with the legislature. Do we need an Attorney General for Parliament? So I ask Honorable Dan to address those questions.
Thank you. Geoffrey, on the question, Geoffrey and Madam Kakande, you touched on the question of contingency fund. If there is no money, even if you have a contingency fund law, nothing will go in it. The problem is the money. You see, money will never be enough. Money will never be enough. It is whether you are committed to do what you want to do. A contingency fund is not a new thing. The white man actually enacted a law, the Contingency Fund Act, which is chapter 170, laws of Uganda. And in it, he provided an entry point for the Auditor General, because the Secretary to the Treasury was supposed to be the accounting officer for that fund, so that there would be transparency and accountability. I've read somewhere that actually there were some problems during the reigns of 1961, 1962, which caused the problems in several areas in Uganda. And that the white man went into the fund and he solved some of the problems. So we cannot, Margaret, we cannot wait until we have what we think is sufficient money to say now we can put some in the contingency fund. No. That contingency simply means that there will be problems in the future. Don't touch this money. I can assure you it is the way we do things now which is problematic. When I served in the East African Legislative Assembly, we were always saying, oh, the budget is small, what. We had no money there. But when the three presidents came and wanted to fast track the East African Federation. The very next day, they introduced a supplementary, and money was availed for the Wako Committee. So it is a question of the big men saying we want this and it is done, not that there is no money. And also, Margaret, Madam Kakandi, you talked of censure. What can it do? It sends a message to others. And you say, even if you censure, what will happen anyway? Well, you as a parliament would have done your work. And it will be upon the president now to take action. If he doesn't, parliament has done its work. Actually, when we censured Muhwezi and his Kutesa in the 6th parliament, then the president made a reshuffle and he dropped Muhwezi. When the next parliament was elected, he didn't reappoint Kutesa. Maybe censure had something to do with it, but after some time they came back anyway. Winnie, you say we put too much power in the presidency. The Constitution does so. I did serve in the Constituent Assembly. I know we were working on air, things were good. There was so much goodwill. Nobody thought things would be where they are today. I actually served in, because we were divided, I served in a committee too, which dealt with the executive chapter on executive, legislature, and judiciary. We thought we had put sufficient mechanisms. We put power in parliament. We said all these things will be with the approval of parliament. We thought parliament would rein in the president by giving parliament power over appointments and so many other things. We created so many independent institutions, human rights, electoral commission, and charged them directly on the consolidated fund without presidential power. We made them independent. It is a weakness of us individuals in Uganda. The Constitution makes all these constitutional commissions, which are supposed to be independent and rein in the executive, makes them independent, even in finances. But when they get there, I don't know what happens. So it is our weaknesses, and we should not say, oh, everything is the president. It is because we let him do so. If you are put a chairman of the Electoral Commission, you are independent. Your budget is independent. Why do you even need to meet the president anyway? Why do these heads of all these commissions have to go to meet the president over what? So basically, some of the problems we are saying the president is too powerful is because we of ourselves. Maybe it comes up also with the terms of appointment. We lobby for these things. I want to be a judge. I want to be this. You're going to speak to the man. So when you get there, problems will come. How do we need the constitutional reform? If there is no goodwill, if there is no political will, whatever kind of constitution you will have, however good it will be, it will not change much. There must be that political will within the leaders to say we will stick with what we have, what is written in the Constitution. When you talked of the 2-term limit, it was a very big thing in the Constituent Assembly. We said we have never had a peaceful transfer of power since the 60s. And the people die, wars happen, coups come in, and we said the only way we can stop this is the 2-term limit. Then you went and lifted it. It was your power in parliament. You could have refused. We can't blame the president for that. You are the ones who gave him that. We had put there mechanisms to stop him. Yeah. Lastly, do in their act. So I don't know how that came about. But I believe the reason why employee of the government. When there are always tensions, there are always disputes between the two arms. How does the other man be the one again to advise you?
Thank you very much, Honorable Dan. So, I think I saw Honorable Lake. I don't know who else had their hand up. We'll take a few because I believe we have 12 more minutes. So we'll start with Honorable Lake, and then if there are maybe 2 or 3 more, and then this session winds up. Thank you very much, Honorable Lake.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable colleagues, HURIPEC, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Lake Sharon Bamoy, the Woman Member of Parliament for Gulu District. What I wanted to talk about has been re-echoed by Member Katesh. I am equally under a lot of pressure that I'm going to be leaving shortly. I sit on the Health Committee of Parliament, and we have an emergency meeting about the intern students, so my colleagues are really calling. Well, a lot has been said. An issue in this country, but as leaders, as stakeholders, we will not give up. We will press on and press on. The bottom line, it stems to corruption. We have corrupt leaders. We have corruption is everywhere, I should say. So that's when, like, we all have issues when it comes to accountability on the Covid-19, and I would like to thank HURIPEC so much for the research they made and came out boldly to launch this today. To this day, the COVID money has not been accounted for to totality, and that is it. It will go. It will go. Before you know, it will go. We had issues. We had in Uganda. It's a trend. Something is hot. Something new comes up to cover up. Apparently, we are dealing with the iron sheet issues. Before you know, first it was the anti-homosexuality bill. The iron sheet came in, and before you know, something else is going to come up, and everything is just brushed under the carpet. But not all hope is lost. I think as Parliament, we need to wake up. We've been slumbering a lot. We've allowed the executive to arm twist us. We almost feel like we don't have a voice, but we have the mandate of the people. I always have a light moment with my colleagues and say, what is the point of being a member of Parliament if we appropriate funds or resources for a particular ministry, and Ministry of Finance send here to that particular ministry? Like the intern student issue, the doctors, the teachers, and all, you know how it is in this country. So that makes us members of Parliament. It's like our power has been stripped off from us. So we need to get back to the drawing board and claim what is ours as members of Parliament. Less of that, we are failing to steer this country to where they expect us to take them. To Honorable Winnie, glad to see you again. Sometimes it's not as easy in there as people think. You've been there, and you've left the house with your head high because you did not lose an election. You decided to leave because you felt it was time for you to leave. But nevertheless, if you feel like coming back, we still need your services. The country still needs you. But you were there, you saw what is there. You try as much as possible as a leader to streamline things, to put things right. The talking is done, but putting it into practice becomes a problem for a number of reasons. Of course, still when it comes to finances and then unfunding priorities and all this and all that. But I want to give hope to Ugandans that not all is lost. We are there, we shall be there. Members of Parliament will all, a new one and even the old one, even to me tomorrow, if I go back to campaign, I will just say there is hope. Give me time, I haven't finished this. I will come back and finish. As we were campaigning, we were all saying, our past leaders did not make it. Maybe I'm the salvation now. So I am.
Join the past leaders.
So yes. So the hope. Let's not lose hope.
Okay.
I believe
Thank you.
all shall be well. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you. Let's have
Can I pass this to?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Yes, very quickly.
Yes, my colleagues. My name is Adriko Yovan. I'm a member of Parliament to represent people of our constituents, Arua District. I'm sorry I came a bit late. Because when you are meeting late, you'll be confused. But as a leader, I'm ready to do something. Chair, first of all, I want to thank organizing committee or the particular organizer for this very important meeting. Makere School of Law, what you have seen on the ground here, I want to congratulate Professor and Special Way. So you have really given us very good direction, and I thought to start, we have a challenge with the Ugandans, and two, we have a lot of work to be done with the Member of Parliament, because I have seen people complaining about the president and the Ugandans. I want to say openly, Ugandans, they look very good, very healthy, but they are selfish, because they're always there on our side. And if we tell the truth will set you free. Most Ugandans, they don't want the truth. When you tell the truth, they say no. The opposition, or the campaigning leaders. For example, I started to work in local government from LC3, LC5, 10 years, and then direct to Parliament. I don't know, after Parliament I'll go to President, I don't know. I'm still here in Parliament. So the person who organized this very important our training is not late. This is the right time because it's a season for the budgeting. I promise after this meeting, allow me to go back with my colleagues to go and love our colleagues to put more money in this position or this organization. Because to make organization strong, we need support from the Parliament. And through this organization, we're going to improve the life of the community. If you try to see, from central government to local government, we have a challenge. Local governments always send the money on the project to the local government. And on ground there, implementation becomes very difficult. This means there's a challenge in local government. There's a lot of corruption starting from up local government. If we come together, work as a team, it's easy to control and to fight the corruption. But if we are divided, this means it's going to be very, very difficult. So for years of time, I promise you, I will go back and do against at the Parliament to come out to support our organization, because I know from tomorrow we're going to have supplemental budget, we're going to do other adjustment, then we shall come back with good report to support our Makere School of Law.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And Honorable Adriko, we shall be back to you for implementation.
Thank you. That's what I want.
The promise.
Yeah. Yes.
Any other question or comment? Where? The back here? I can't see. Somebody at the back there? Nobody else? Okay. Okay, it's 11:28. I want to thank Honorable Dan Gallo. I think these insights have been very important and very enlightening, both, of course, for us as HURIPEC, as researchers, but I think for the public at large and for Parliament in particular. And I think that this is really for us to be looking at what do we need, what needs to be done in terms of ensuring greater accountability, greater transparency, and most importantly, the enforcement of those mechanisms of accountability. So I think according to the program, we're supposed to take remarks by the principal. So I will, let me invite the principal please to come up and make his remarks. Thank you very much. So let's give Honorable Dan another clap. Thanks. Thank you again. Yeah, I think so.
Can we give a round of applause for our panelists and the chairperson, Professor Olokonyango? Thank you so much. I think that has been a very stimulating conversation and discussion that we've had. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand on the protocol that was earlier enumerated. I think it's been a very lively and very informative discussion that we've had. I should probably emphasize the fact that beyond the teaching of law, which we do, one of our mandates is actually engaging and conducting cutting-edge research on critical national and regional issues. And I think the research on the management and oversight of COVID-19 funds is that kind of research that would squarely fall within our mandate. So again, I invite you to join me in thanking the team that conceived and conducted that research. Dr. Nampeo and the HURIPEC team, thank you so much. I think for me it is even exciting that our guest of honor, the Honorable Deputy Speaker, when he was here, actually said that the research findings are going to be taken on because they are yet to go into the session where actually they will be interrogating that report on the COVID funds. And he said that actually will be inviting us. So I think as a School of Law, one of the ways in which we are going to take this forward is to still engage the Deputy Speaker on this so that we appear before Parliament and press more for the recommendations that actually are coming out of this report. Ladies and gentlemen, the School of Law is also known, and we are proud of being that law school that actually convenes multi-stakeholder dialogues on different issues to do with governance, rule of law, and human rights. And I think this mini dialogue and conversations we've just had is testament to that. Just a couple of weeks, about 2 or 3 weeks, we convened a very exciting dialogue on the anti-homosexuality bill. And I was shocked when a number of people called me and they were like, Principal, of all issues that are pressing this country, was this the most important issue that you should really convince stakeholders about, talk and discuss about homosexuality? And you see, some of these were actually my colleagues within the university. And certainly I was like, okay, so if the School of Law cannot convince stakeholders to discuss and interrogate a law in making like that, then who will do it? I know that actually one of them was even explicit. He asked me, how come that you have never convened any dialogue on the parish development model. Okay, there were many debates around why we convened that. But I think it is critical that we continue fighting and protecting that space for us as academics, as researchers, as students, but also as general civil society, okay? To continue engaging and debating all these issues openly and publicly, even issues that may be seen to be controversial or not convenient for the powers that be. Otherwise, on behalf of the School of Law, I thank you sincerely for your participation in this dialogue. Thank you for keeping time, those that kept time. Thank you for the observations, the comments, the panelists, thank you, the organizer, thank you. Until we meet, God bless you as we build for the future. The dialogue is closed.
Thank you very much, Prof. I want to thank you specifically for closing this wonderful launch. And everyone, we really appreciate your time. I'm just adding a voice, no more speeches, things are done. But just to prepare your appetite and transition it, because there's a wonderful lunch for you. The people call it a brunch. So, because it's a bit early, but you're welcome to it. Just a little logistical announcements. Lunch is available for all of us. So please don't leave it here. Make sure you have this early brunch. But also, the report is available now online. You should be able to get online on the HURIPEC website, and you should be able to access an electronic version. We have some copies here. I think there is another lot coming, so in case you missed the hard copy, we will be able to send it to you at an appropriate time. There is also an ongoing conversation. Please, let's carry this conversation forward. Our social media handles are active. There's a conversation online on Twitter, on YouTube. You will be able to access the proceedings of this launch online. So in case you came late and you want to revisit, please, this is available online as well. And we thank our online participants for following and keenly being part of this process. We recognize you and value your time and commitment to issues of transparency and accountability. And finally, I want to add my voice to say thank you very much and welcome all of you to keep engaging with us, to continue working together on various issues. The Human Rights and Peace Center, the School of Law, our doors are open to you. Anytime, please, you're welcome. As you can see, these professors are very approachable. Many of you think they're very difficult people. It is only the content that distinguishes them, but they are very, very, easily approachable, as you have seen, and they are very nice people to hang out with. So feel free whenever you see them, interact with them, visit us at Makerere, and share more ideas. We thank you very much. If I've not recognized you, forgive me, but I did my best. I think it was only Sehud. Sehud, thank you for coming. And yes, Honorable Winnie Kiza, former Member of Parliament and Leader of Opposition, thank you for coming. And yes, Honorable Adriko, yes. Ivan, thank you for coming from Uganda Youth Society for Human Rights. And the representative from Parliament, the Parliament technical side, thank you for coming. Honorable Rashid, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Can we have a group photo? Is it possible for us to have it in front here? Probably the technical team can guide us. So if you would come up here, that would really be good. But also above all, we want to thank our donor, the Open Society Initiative for East Africa, for funding this process. I think they're transitioning to Open Society Foundation. Now we really appreciate our donors who are here, the diplomatic corps, the various missions, the embassies, the international organizations that are represented here. We really appreciate your support and working relations with the School of Law. Please, let's continue working together, and like they're saying, the money is disappearing. Whatever you find, you still can trust the School of Law with it. Thank you very much. I would invite everyone for a group photo. In front, I think, seems better. We will all fit here. It will be a very nice photo. The cameramen will figure out how we will fit. They will go at the back. You are free to climb on the tables. Not like the way Parliament climbed some time back, but for the group photo purpose, you're free to get a vantage point. So please, kindly let me invite you forward. I see that you are eager to continue. You want more. We've been tickled more, but it would be nice if we can have one group photo, huge group photo. I think the principal will be in the middle, the deputy principal will be in the middle, honorable members of parliament.
There will be so many.
So members of parliament, please come forward. Our professors, please come forward. Our director, please. Yes. We are going to keep networking, please. Deputy principal, please. The HURIPEC team, please. Yes, please, all of us. No, all of us. It's one big photo, not like the other time. So it's one big photo. So please, if you are. I don't know, but some people up there are taking photos. Yes. The upcoming lawyers, please come forward. Okay, thank you very much. Yes. They keep checking which one is better. Yes. You're way ahead.